talked about properties, and one of the properties that we talked about was the distributive property. The distributive property becomes very important. You're going to see it a lot as we go forward. So it's important that we spend some time on it individually away from the other properties. There's two types of distributive property. There's forwards and backwards, and we're going to learn both today. And then tomorrow, the lesson will be distributive property, but instead of with only numbers, we're going to start to add in some variables, some letters. So your goal for today is I can rewrite expressions using the distributive property. And just keep in mind, when your teacher asks you, please distribute these papers to the class, all they're asking you to do is pass out. And that's exactly what distributive property is. We're passing out one number. Okay, so that's exactly what I just talked about. Distributive means to give out. So here's a cute little example. So on Halloween, you go trick-or-treating. You knock on the door of Mr. Pumpkin, who lives over here, okay? The Dracula knocks on the door. The Scarecrow knocks on the door. You know, everybody's dressed up. So who does the pumpkin give candy to? Well, you'll notice that the pumpkin is the one that's outside the parentheses. So he has to give candy to everybody inside the parentheses. He has to give it to the vampire or to Dracula, and he has to give it to the Scarecrow. And if there were even more people, he would have to give it to everybody else. It's kind of like a sharing position, if you will. Okay, so again, there's two ways to do distributive property. We're going to first focus on forwards, and then we're going to talk about backwards. And backwards has another name. It's called factoring out the GCF. So the GCF is very much involved, and we'll get to that just a little bit later. Okay, so let's talk about an example of forwards distributive property. This is the most common kind of distributive property that you're going to run into. You're going to have a problem that looks like this. 8 parentheses, 5 plus 3, close parentheses. All right, so this 8 who's outside, he's attached to the parentheses, okay? And so he needs to be distributed or shared with everybody else. So what happens is, first, he is shared with the 5. And that means since they're attached, it's going to be 8 times 5, okay? And that's why we have 8 times 5 down here. Then I'm going to bring down whatever operation is in there. In this case, it's plus. And I need to share the 8 with everybody else. And in this case, it's going to be the 3. So again, because they're attached, it's multiplication. 8 times 3. So plus 8 times 3. Now, 8 times 5 is 40. Again, bring down my operation. So plus. And 8 times 3 is 24. And I need you to solve this problem all the way, and you're going to get 64. All right. So let's try a couple of these. We're going to try them together, okay? So I've drawn the arrows on the first one here for you. So 2 times 6, okay? And if you want to write it out 2 times 6, you can, but these are pretty simple numbers. So when I say 2 times 6, I just want you to write 12 over here. Now our operation is plus, so I'm going to bring over my plus. And then who else is the 2 distributive with? The 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. And when you do 12 plus 8, you're going to get 20. Okay, let's try another example. So we have 3 times 4, and that's going to be 12. My operation in the middle is plus, so I bring it over. Now who else is he being distributed with? The 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Now add these up. 12 plus 6 is going to be 18. Okay? Now look at this guy. Nothing has changed except that I put the 4 on the other side of the parentheses. But it does not change anything at all. I just moved it around to try and show you a different way to write it. Okay? So again, 4 is being distributed to the 7, so 4 times 7 is 28. The operation in the middle is plus. And again, the 4 also has to distribute to the 3, so 4 times 3 is 12. when you add 28 and 12, you're going to get 40. All right, let's do this last one here. Same thing, I just put him on the right-hand side. 3 times 8 is 24. My operation in the middle is plus, so I bring it over. And then 3 times 1 is 3. Add them all up. 24 plus 3 is 27, and that's your answer. It's nothing too complicated, I do promise you. Okay, so let's work on a couple of these, all right? So let's distribute. 2 times 7 is 14. The operation in the middle is plus, so I bring it down. And then 2 times 8 is 16. 14 plus 16 is going to give you 30. Okay, let's try this one. 3 times 4 is 12. My operation in the middle this time is subtraction, so I bring it down. 3 times 1 is 3. So 12 minus 3 is 9. Okay, nothing crazy to it. Oops. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so here we have 4 times 10, that's 40. My operation in the middle is subtraction, so I bring it down. And 4 times 3 is 12. 40 minus 12 is going to give us 28. Okay, let's do this example. You'll notice I just put them on the other side, but same thing. 5 times 8 is 40. The operation in the middle is minus. 5 times 4 is 20. So 40 minus 20 is 20. There you go. All right, I want you to try these 3 on your own. I'm going to do them as well, and then we'll compare answers. If you're not done with the U-tries, go ahead and pause the video until you're done. But let's take a look. You should have gotten 60 for the first one, 27 for the second one, and 8 for the third one. And if you didn't, go back and look at the numbers that I got, pause the video, and figure out where you went wrong. Okay, that was forwards distributive property. Now we're going to move into backwards distributive property. It's just slightly more complicated, but it's not anything too crazy, all right? So with forwards distributive property, we end up with an answer. With backwards distributive property, we're actually going to end up with something that looks like this right here, okay? Because we're working backwards from an answer. Okay, so in backwards distributive property, this is what your problem is going to look like. Now, ask yourself, are there any parentheses there? No. So if there's no parentheses and it's asking you to use distributive property, you're going to work backwards. The first thing you're going to do is look at the two numbers, it won't be anything crazy, and find the GCF. The GCF, remember, is greatest common factor. What's the biggest whole number that goes into both of those numbers evenly? In this case, it's going to be 10, okay? So what I like to do, and I'm going to skip between these two steps, okay, is once I find the GCF, I like to set up the problem. I write 10, open parentheses, and I literally draw a space, and I look back at my original operation in the middle as plus, I write plus, then I draw another space and close the parentheses. The rest is easy peasy. How many times does 10 go into 30? Your answer should be 3. How many times does 10 go into 20? Your answer should be 2. And guess what? That is your answer to backwards distributive property. And what it looks like is it looks like the beginning of forwards distributive property. Let's practice and it will make sense. Okay. Here we have 30 plus 25. First step, what is the GCF? And guys, remember, if you're not quick with the GCF, use a factor tree, okay? It's not going to hurt you, I promise. So the GCF of these two numbers I know is 5. I'm going to write 5. I'm going to open my parentheses. I'm going to draw a space. My operation is plus, so I'm going to write a plus. Draw another space, close my parentheses. Okay, just like that. Now, second question. How many times does 5 go into 30? 6. How many times does 5 go into 25? 5. So there is my answer. 5 parentheses 6 plus 5. Nothing to it, not too bad. Let's try another one. Okay, 16 plus 10. What is my GCF? Use a factor tree if you need to. I happen to know that the GCF is going to be 2. So I'm going to write 2, open parentheses, draw a space. My operation is plus. Draw another space, close my parentheses. Now I just need to find these two missing numbers. 2 goes into 16, 8 times. 2 goes into 10, 5 times. This is my answer. I know it looks weird, but it's because it's backwards distributive property. You're going to take your answer and work backwards to get parentheses. Okay, let's try another one. So we have 90 and 15. We need to find our GCF. Okay, think about this for a minute, and in fact, I'm going to make a factor tree with you. Okay, so let's split 90 in half, 2 and 45. Then we have 5 and 9, and we have 3 and 3. Remember, factor trees don't take you too long. And over here we have 3 and 5. Okay, now what are our matches? I see a 3 and a 3, so I'm going to bring that over. And I see a 5 and a 5, and I'm going to bring that over. And I multiply them together. 3 times 5 is 15. That means my GCF is 15. Okay, I just wanted to show you to remind you how you do your factor trees to find your GCF. Okay, so our GCF is 15. Open parentheses, space, my operation is subtraction this time, space, close parentheses. How many times does 15 go into 90? It's going to be 6 times. How many times does 15 go into 15? 1 time. So this right here should be your answer. 15, open parentheses, 6 minus 1, close parentheses. Okay, I want you to try both forwards and backwards distributive property on your own, and then we will compare answers. Make sure that you realize when you're doing forwards and when you're doing backwards, okay? If it's backwards, there's going to be no parentheses in the original question. If it's forwards, there will be parentheses. All right, let's go ahead and compare our answers. If you have not finished, I need you to hit pause and finish. Okay, so for the left-hand side, you should have 32. Number 2 should be 150. And number 3 should be 40. Now you'll see that I added several more numbers to the distributive property, but it shouldn't have made it any harder. It was just another thing to distribute, okay? All right, for number 4, you should have gotten 3 parentheses 6 plus 5. For number 5, you should have gotten 7 parentheses 5 plus 2. And for number 6, you should have gotten 12 parentheses 7 minus 6. All right, that is the end of this lesson here. As always, you can fast forward, rewind, or pause. Distributive property is very important. We're going to use it almost every day through the end of the year, so you need to practice. And as always, if you have any questions, ask me in class.